Hello. Let me just adjust this. Welcome to the first stream of the new year. Uh, oh, just light. All right. So happy New Year, everyone. I hope you guys, if you partied last night, hope you partied well. If you didn't party last night, I hope you slept well. And yeah, so we're just gonna have a pretty chill day. Um, I've got in the vice right now. I've got a grasshopper from Mary Orvis Marbury that I'm just finishing up. This is going to be tied for fishing. So you know, um, not too much effort because this might get lost. And then yeah, I'm probably going to start something. Probably won't finish. Probably won't finish it. I'm not entirely certain what I want to start today. But yeah, we'll see what we've got going on. Um, so yeah, Grasshopper from Mary Orvis Marbury. Just checking something real quick. Looks good. Making sure the stream is healthy. If you've been either on my Instagram or following the stream, you'll probably know that I don't tie fishing flies very often. Um, so if you're watching, this is a little bit of a treat. I I don't I don't get to fish a whole lot, so I don't usually need to do too much refilling in my fly boxes. Um, which on one hand is nice, uh, but I'm not out fishing. Um, the other thing that I don't normally do is I'm tying with 6/0 uni thread, um, which is a little bit bulkier than I normally would. But again, it's a fish and fly. Just the added security of using a mono, uh, a, a heavier thread is nice. So now, unfortunately for this, normally if I'm tying a fishing fly, I would use um, Angora goat. Um, this is Waspy's multi pack. Unfortunately, this pack doesn't contain gray or any of the other natural colors of Angora, or not natural colors, but like earth tone colors of Angora goat. So I am going to have to use seal, but you know, I guess I could use something like a hare's ear, particularly since this is for fishing. But I do find things like beaver and hare's ear tend to be too fine for these large hooks. I do want something with a little bit of bulk to it. A coarser fibered fur. Um, and gray is not one of those colors that is used very often, and I have a rather large bag of this stuff, so I don't feel like I'm wasting it. Um, my personal preference is not to use synthetics um, whenever possible. So, like, if I can avoid it. If I can. The only synthetic that I use on a regular basis, besides my thread, I usually use a monofilament thread or um, you know uh, one of these synthetic threads. Is rayon floss for fishing flies. Just because that it's a convenience thing. But like dubbings like Antron, uh, I don't use very much or very often. I just they don't quite have the right look to them for these flies, for classic flies. And yeah, so I will say for fishing, I am tying classic flies like this grasshopper. You know, I'm not fishing with the latest and greatest, I suppose you might say. Um, so I don't, even for my fishing flies, I don't use a whole lot of synthetics. All right. And there's something nice about fishing with a classic fly tied with, the right materials. Even if you haven't put quite as much time and effort into, you know, uh, making it perfect or it's still nice. It's still nice to fish with a authentically produced fly. Um, and fishing flies are also a great place to use split uh, jungle cockeyes. So that's something that I do. Nope. Nuts. There's pretty much no need to use, nice full eyes for a fishing fly. Um, Particularly if, like in this case, if they're being used for the underwing, because they're not representing or portraying the eye of an animal. Maybe like they might be doing in a salmon fly, like as the sides of a salmon fly. Here they're just support for the wing, so there's really no need to use, uh, unbroken eyes. Just make sure those aren't straight, a little bit twisted. I think just because of all the fur. need to build up just a little bit of bulk where my wing is going in because the underwing, the jungle cock, is having a hard time getting over the amount of fur. Even though there's a pretty good taper on the fur, just need a little bit of bulk here. There we go. It's better. I didn't quite want the underwing to stick up quite so high. Okay. Now for the wing, which is just yellow and claret. Goose. Interesting. Having a little trouble getting the wings to pass around the underwing. You can always just use a dubbing needle or something to split them and make sure. Time in, just like any other wing. And then, because this is a lake fly and the wings are usually pretty high, I always like to pull them back a little bit. And also just to make sure that they sit over the underwing properly. All right, so wax my thread, bind down the butt ends of the wings. Now, take the thread back to the base of the wings, and we're going to tie in hackle. And that's just a claret hackle over. And for these flies that have collars, you don't need a particularly tapered hackle. I like to save the tapered hackle for body hackles because that looks nice. Yeah, for these collars, you can use pretty much, a hackle that has appropriately long or short barbs, but it doesn't need to have any particular amount of taper. So, I'm not sure if you can see this one, but pulling out the barbs, it doesn't have much taper at all. So this one would be this hackle would be pretty unsuitable for a body hackle, but it works just fine for a collar. Tied in. Trim my excess. Going to fold hackle on the fly. All I'm doing is just brushing one side of the barbs to the other. And if you have, good stiff, rooster hackle like this is, not a problem. So I want a fairly robust collar here. So I'm probably going to do about 3 turns. And you always want to tie off your hackle or your, whatever hackle it is, at the same place around the hook as you tied it in. So, for example, I tied my. So, if you think of like the hook as the face of a clock, and if the eye is facing towards me, I tied the hackle in at 9 o'clock, and I went, um, 1, 2, 3 wraps, and then I tie it on back at 9 o'clock. That way, you end up with an even distribution of fibers and of hackle all the way around the hook. Wax my thread. Whenever I'm securing something that I'm afraid might pull out, under the rigors of fishing, I wax my thread. And this has kind of the added benefit of when I go to lay down the uh, the hurl head, the hurl will have something just to grip onto a little bit. Ostrich hurl and even peacock hurl can be pretty slippery when winding it on, and when to get a perfectly I wouldn't say dense, but like to get the densest hurl head that you can, you want every wrap of hurl to be immediately adjacent or butted up against the previous hurl hurl wrap. So um, and hurl, the stem a hurl is definitely something that we'll pull out given the opportunity. So I'm definitely going to wax my thread. And hack pliers makes it easier. And I don't fold my hurl, but I do just kind of brush it out of the way because I don't want any hurl fibers pointing forward. I always want them to be pointing back towards the wing after I've wrapped them. So not folding the hurl per se, but I'm just making sure that none of them end up on the wrong side of the stem after wrapping. All right. Uh, wax my thread, bind down the end of that hurl, build up a nice little head. Definitely left. I'm not usually one for leaving a whole bunch of space at the eye, but I think this is fine. It's a fishing fly. No need to stress over the details. Normally like to crowd the eye of my hook just a little bit, but kind of whip finish. There we go. Grasshopper from Lydia Rivers Marbury, or Mary Rivers Marbury, rather. Um, Tied on your fishing hook. This is just a Mustad. I don't even remember the model number. Um, Down-eyed, nice hook. Yeah, so I'm just gonna apply some Loon. I have this Loon clear, and I actually just got for Christmas the UV hardened versions. I haven't tried them out yet, but I'm excited to see how they work. One thing I like about the Loon head cements is that they, at least they claim to be environmentally friendly, or at least environmentally conscious. So, you know, whether that's entirely true or not, they can't be any worse than some of the stuff that fly tires use for head cement. But anyway, just gonna take this out. Device this. All right, that is a fish ready Grasshopper from Lady Orvis Marbury or Mary Orvis Marbury. Gosh, I don't know why I have lady stuck in my head, but yeah, Mary Orvis Marbury, Grasshopper. Um, all right, so let's see. What should I tie next? I have a bunch of these underbodies made up on fishing hooks. I think I'm intending to do a set of fishing flies for a giveaway. Uh, I just uh, got 400 not subscribers, but followers on Instagram, and I'm thinking when I hit 500, I'm going to do a giveaway, and it'll be a box of Mary Orvis Marbury style lake flies tied for fishing. I know a lot, or there are probably more people who fish than not on my Instagram. So, uh, you know, hey, if you want to help me out, push me over 500 followers on Instagram. I'll do a giveaway and give away some Mary Orvis Marbury lake flies, some fishing flies. And all right, what should we do next? What is next? We could do a Lord Baltimore or a Black Prince or man, where did my list go? There we are. I have a whole list, so actually, you know what? One that's fairly popular that I like, and I have the materials more or less out, is the Royal Coachman. So I'm gonna do a Royal Coachman, and I need. So one of the things about the Royal Coachman is it's got a floss body, so I'm going to be starting with white thread. I think I mentioned this in yesterday's stream, but if you're doing a floss body, you want white underneath because when the floss gets wet, or even just in like brighter light, black thread will show through a floss body. Come on. There you go. Black thread will show through a floss body pretty easily. So I'm using white thread under the floss. Let's see. I need some more tinsel. I have a few scraps, but gosh. All right. So this is a fishing fly. So I'm going to use. I'm actually going to use some silver wire. This stuff is probably a little bit heavy for tip tag kind of thing, but yeah, it's blingy. Right, and so even though this is waxed uni thread, I'm still trying to keep, everything smooth. I'm making, all my wraps close together. Yeah, it takes a little bit more time when tying if you're tying just a fishing fly, but it definitely creates a nicer looking result. If you're just tying at home, trying to fill the season's fly box, it's not such a big deal. Uh, but if you're tying, professionally, or if you are tying for clients or customers, it definitely helps to sell flies. um, and because the Royal Coachman has a rear butt, a peacock butt at the rear, I'm going to trim my tinsel, or my wire in this case, short, because that'll be covered up by the butt. All right. So what I just did there was build up a little bit of bulk because the wire is a little bit thick. Um, I need a little bit of extra bulk so that the tail doesn't, go get pushed up um, by the uh, by the bulk of the wire. So I'm gonna soft loop it, then just drop it right in on top. There we go. Um, as I mentioned yesterday, doesn't always work the first time. If it doesn't work, or you messed it up, take it off, do it again. This is not. These materials are less fragile than I think a lot of people think they are. You can try again easily. Um, all right. Now I need some peacock. I don't tie with a lot of peacock. Probably the most patterns that I use peacock the most from are, things like woolly buggers, or not woolly buggers, but things of that nature. Pheasant tail nymphs. So I tend to use a lot of bronze peacock just because that's what I have on hand. A lot of, but for a Royal Coachman, I definitely think it's got to be green. And now, one of the things about peacock is the there are two sides of peacock, and it curves. The actual, like, barbs on the peacock herl curve forward, uh, but because I tend to, you know, almost fold my hurls, um, it kind of matters a little less for me. So right, so I'm not quite folding it, but I'm just pushing it all to the back. It does mean that I can get a slightly denser, um, curl, butt out of peacock, by doing that. But uh, the shiny side of the hurl, is kind of facing to the rear. and some people don't like that. Um, I would much rather have a denser butt with, and it's not like it's not that unshiny. The other thing people don't like about wrapping curl this way sometimes is that, again, you can see that curvature towards the front, so they're all curving this way, and again, I don't mind. I don't. It doesn't hurt my aesthetic. For some people, they don't like that. Um, my my preference is for a denser wrap than a curl that curls in one particular direction or another. Uh, this peacock's getting kind of fine out towards the tips, and I think I might have just broken that off too short. Nuts. Let's try it. Okay, yeah, that's a little too short. Man. Yeah, peacock is one of those things that drive you crazy. Okay. Where'd the eye go? And I want a certain length, but just because this is a longer body, and in between it's just red silk, or red floss, and it's not otherwise not a whole lot of contrast. So having a nice thick butt um, just gives it a little bit more, gives the whole fly a little bit more definition. Fortunately, this hurl is really fine, so it keeps breaking on me. All right, that looks good. All right, so the main part of the body after the butt is just straight um, red floss, red silk would be the original call. Um, I just want to lay down my tying thread and doesn't have to be perfect, but if you want a smooth floss body, you want a smooth underbody. And unlike a fly that has, say, um, uh, a hurl head, this doesn't have a hurl head. It just has a collar. Um, and so I am going to crowd the head just a little bit more on this fly. But it does have a forward butt up against the or underneath the wing. So do have to remember to leave room for that. Got feathers in the way. Hmm. Okay. Let's see. Eh, sorry. Just checking something. Okay. Red silk for fishing fly. Going with well, let's see. I might not have any. I'm going to use a slightly less expensive silk. This is just some of the French silk. Thought I had some red rayon, but apparently not in my box. I'm going to use 2 strands of it. Just give it a little bit more bulk. It's a wrap. And this is just a plain red silk body, no ribbing. Um, tie it off. Tie on my second curl, but so the origins of the Royal Coachman is apparently a notable fly tire. Was asked to tie coachman flies, but make them a little bit stronger. And so, in order to make the hurl, the hurl body of the coachman a little bit stronger, he tied in a segment of silk in the middle. And he asked his friends at you know fishing camp or whatever, hey, this is it's tied like a coachman, but it's not a coachman. Apparently, he also added the wood duck at the end, and he's like, "Well, what do I call it?" And it's like, "Well, it's kind of royal looking, so call it a royal coachman." It's like, okay, so that's how you get the royal coachman. All right, so for the wing, I'm going to use White Goose. If you look at the plates from Mary Arvis Marbury's books, uh, they they look to be like feathers with either a joint or a stem running down the middle. Some of those I know, have been interpreted by some people to be whole feathers of some sort, whether it's you know, a whole white feather or something like gray mallard. Um, I prefer to stick with the idea that this is a coachman just tied with a red segment in the middle of the body. So I stick with a white slip of um, some white feather, duck or goose. Goose ties large enough, so going goose. Okay. All right, so I'm going to trim it down like usual. And then because I want it to stay like usual, I'm going to wax my thread. Um, and if I were tying like a presentation fly here, I could switch my thread out for black since the head of this fly is black. But I have black head cement. It'll do the job turning the head black. So um, all right. So next is the hackle. That is a fiery brown or furnace brown uh, hackle. Sometimes I get asked why I don't use schlappen on my lake flies, my mom flies, and I don't like the way schlappen is all webby. Um, it's just not my preferred uh, style of hackle for these flies. At the same time, a little webbiness is appreciated. Actually, no. So the hackle that I have here, that is the correct color. This is very nice grade 3 half rooster neck from Whiting. This is probably a little too nice for an application like this, but it's what I got. And you always end up with those really large feathers at the base of the the neck, and you don't know what to do with them. Um, and since I don't tie Carrie Stevens style streamers, a lot of those end up in salmon flies and Mariovis Marbury flies as collars and throat hackles. Um, of course, grizzly was not a very common color in salmon flies, a little more so in Mariovis Marbury flies. Yeah, but these are very nice. These normally you would use like an Indian rooster neck for like salmon flies, and those are great because they come in white and you can have them dyed any color. But in terms of just quality of hackle, you can't beat one of the modern dry fly necks or saddles if you can find feathers of the appropriate size. Can I get that right? I don't know. Okay. So that's looking pretty good. The wing is nice and centered. The one thing about the Royal Coachman is it does have or I think it has a red head in the just depictions. So I'm going to whip finish this with white thread. Sorry, I think I said that this has a black thread head, um, or a black lacquered head earlier in the stream, and that is not how I interpret this pattern. I broke my thread. Couple of half hitches. Nope. Doesn't want to seem to slip over the eye here. Hey. All right. I think it has a red head, or properly tied, it should have a red head. At least as a lake fly. I realize the non-lake fly versions tend not to have red heads. So what I am going to do is I'm going to essentially tie on some just use the leftover red silk. And I'm going to tie on the red silk. It's a little bit complicated because the red silk doesn't have any it's not on a bobbin, or I don't need it on a bobbin. I'm going to basically give the head a couple layers of red silk, just enough to tamp down some of the fuzzies built around the head, and then I will attempt to finish this. Come on. Nope. Nice, neat head. There we go. A Royal Coachman. Again, I'm going to use some of the Loon Clear and bodkin. So while I finish this up, just a few announcements. I think I'm going to call the stream there for the day. Happy New Year. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I hope the new year brings you lots of joy, lots of happiness, tight lines, full fly boxes, all that jazz. Thanks for supporting me through 2019, especially on my Instagram. Like I said, I just broke 400 followers there. And also, like I said, when I hit 500, I'll do a giveaway. And it's going to be these Mary Arvis Marbury flies tied for fishing. So head on over to my Instagram, subscribe, or follow me there. Yeah, getting close to 500, which is crazy. So there we go. The finished Royal Coachman tied for fishing. Nice must head hook. Thanks for hanging out. My Instagram is justwondering.brad. And if you want to support the stream or buy any of the flies that you've seen me tie on the stream or on my Instagram, uh, you can look up my Etsy shop. It's Studio 1213. Thanks again and Happy New Year.